Hey, what's up my fellow small business supporters? I'm Savvy, and today we are here with another book review. It's been a while, I think, since I've reviewed a contemporary YA novel, and since contemporary YA is one of my favorite genres, I am really excited to be back with you guys today to review Slay by Brittney Morris.
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago.
You guys asked for it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, welcome to my channel for the first time. Please don't forget to subscribe because every Monday and Friday at 11 a.m. Central, I put out new videos about books, writing, and my life as a small business owner. In addition to that, every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central, I host the AuthorTube Sleepover, where a bunch of writers get together, put on our pajamas, work on our writing, and it is such a fun time. So, today, to be reviewing Slay by Brittney Morris, which is probably the most recent YA book I've read. I actually have a book club group on Facebook. If you guys didn't know about that, it's linked in the description below. I've had a few people DM me on Instagram being like, Savvy, are you ever gonna start a book club? And I'm like, yeah, I have one. I guess I don't talk about it that much, but it's in the description below. It's a Facebook group, and previously the group had just been for like posting about your own writing and posting about what you're reading and just discussing whatever books were on your mind. But then I was like, what if we did like a monthly reading challenge, like book of this month, we're gonna read this, next month we're gonna read this. So for August, I was like, let's read Slay this month. And then next month this month now for September, we're reading Bright-Sided by Barbara Ehrenreich, and I'm really excited for that one. So I'm in the middle of that book. A review on that will be coming soon. But if you would like to join that book club, links in the description below, go ahead and join. So I would be really interested in anyone else who was in the Facebook group who read this book, or even just anyone in general who read this book. I want to know your thoughts on it because I thought there were so many interesting things going on in this book and so many things to love in this book. First of all, I just want to say, before I get into like the meat of the review, I really wanted to, before doing a review of this book, I wanted to like do a whole like gamer girl books video. I want to do a video on like my recommendations for the best gamer girl books and descriptions of them, but I couldn't find that many, and I realized that like I hadn't read that many of them, and this was kind of like the main one. I feel like this is the big gamer girl book right now, if that makes sense. And if you guys have recommendations though, please let me know in the comments below because I want to do a gamer girl whole gamer girl books video. I think that would be so fun. Maybe there just aren't that many gamer girl books out there yet, and this is kind of a pioneer, which I am all for because this book is really awesome and I think is, in fact, dare I say, iconic. So for those of you who saw my latest book review video before this one, which was for Shattered by fellow author tuber Aphrodite Lee, during that video, I broke down my book review system that I've been using. Originally, that system was just going to be for indie books, but the more I think of it, the more I'm going to apply that system to all books, because as a small business owner, I have the belief that books are a product that provides us value in some way, just like anything else does. As a business owner whose business creates books, that's a thing that I've always believed. And that's why I like to review the book holistically, if that makes sense, because a review of a book isn't just about the author. It's about the entire experience for me. It's about the cover, it's about the binding of the book, it's about my experience receiving the book and the connections to the book, and if there were any cool promotions or events that went along with the book, especially when it comes to indie books, because those are often books that have the author creating a small business at the forefront. Now, this book is a traditionally published book, and I believe it's by a big publisher, Simon & Schuster. Yes, so this book is published by Simon & Schuster, so this is a Big Five traditionally published book. For the sake of reviewing it for the most audience value, I am going to focus the vast majority of this review on the story itself, the content of the story, the characters, the plot, but I'm going to touch on each of those other items just at the beginning because it's a lot easier for me to do book reviews when I have a structured system that I can follow. Got some notes in this cute little journal. Let's make it happen. So as many of you guys probably know, when I review books, I like to break the book down into three categories, which is the physical book, the campaign and promotion surrounding the book, and then the story itself. The story itself is always the biggest category, or I guess just the content itself, because sometimes if it's nonfiction or if it's a workbook of some kind, if it's not a traditional story or novel, then the content is always the biggest category, because that generally is what has the biggest impact. There's 10 total points, which then I divide by 2 to create my Amazon and Goodreads rating out of 5. For the book itself, I mean, this book gets all 3 points for that. Cover is gorgeous. You know what? People say don't judge a book by its cover, but F that, you guys, because book covers are gorgeous. Book cover art is such an interesting industry. It's such a fun thing to go into. I love this cover. I think that the main character, who we're going to go into a brief summary of it in just a minute, the main character, Kira, is on the cover. I just love how she looks so confident, and she is a very confident character, even though she has moments of self-doubt. So I think the portrayal of her and her emotion is just perfect. I love the letters. I love the whole color scheme. I mean, guys, I love this color scheme, if you couldn't tell. This book, you know, it's a nice hardcover. I liked the typesetting, which I know is a weird thing to say, but sometimes typesetting is so small in books that it gets me, like, frustrated, which I know is silly, but I liked the typesetting and the binding and the interior. All of that is great. All 3 points for the physical book. For the campaign, I gave it all 2 points as well, because I found out about this book on Twitter when I saw the author tweeting about it, I guess in some kind of book Twitter or author Twitter discussion, and I was immediately like responding to her like, that book sounds cool, and she was like liking my tweets and stuff. Guys, I always love authors who engage with their readers and engage with their fans, because as an author myself, I love to engage with my readers. As a YouTuber, I love to engage. I love when there's kind of more of a community aspect rather than a creator and audience and a barrier there. So I loved that. And then I also went right ahead and I ordered this book from a small bookstore business called Books and Crannies, which I have linked in the description below. I was going through Twitter looking at some small business bookstores, and I saw this one called Books and Crannies talking about being a small business, specifically a small business owned by a Black woman. And you guys know how much I am an advocate for women in business. Check out my Lady Business Owners Facebook group in the description below. So I was like, I'm gonna be supporting small businesses with this book. So I ordered the book from there. So just basically the whole experience of achieving this book or receiving this book or whatever was great. So 2 points for that. Okay, so we're 5 for 5. Now let's move on to the content of the book, which is the part of the review that everyone's really here for. Time for a brief summary. So Slay is the story of Kira, who is a 17-year-old high school senior doing normal high school girl stuff in the process of applying to college, but she's got a big secret, which is that she is the developer of the popular MMORPG Slay. So this is a VR card game, which is really interesting. It's like, if any of you guys out there haven't done VR before, it's super fun. You put on the headset, you have like the headphones, and like you can hear and see everything going on around you. You have little hand controls, and it's like you're in the virtual reality world. It's fantastic. So she has created this game. She's developed it. She and her friend Cicada, who lives in France, who we learn about in the book, together have basically built this game from the ground up, and it is fantastic. And there are tons of people who love playing this game. It's a whole world on its own. So she's trying to keep this kind of a secret from everyone in her life, just because it's kind of her escape from the real world. So she doesn't want to, you know, people say don't mix business and pleasure. That's what she's like, I'm not mixing my game world and my real world. So she wants to keep those separate. But then a murder happens in the real world based on a dispute of people trying to trade the game coins for money. And now all of this press is coming out. The whole discussion, we all hear this discussion every couple of years. Do video games cause violence? Are video games corrupting our youth? That whole thing. And now everyone's like, the developer should issue an apology. But she's like, y'all, I don't want people to know I'm the developer. So that's kind of where the plot goes. And that's the main premise of this book, but there is so much more than that behind it, and we're gonna get into all of it. So within my content category for the book review, there are 5 points available. Those points are for reader immersion, for character development, character arcs, and plot in general, for suspension of disbelief, for the overall originality of the book, and then the overall value that I felt that I got as a reader. So those are the 5 available points. Let's get into it. I think we'll start off with originality, just because I think this book really excels in the originality area. This book deals with a lot of different really important issues and deals with them in an organic and authentic way. One of the main issues that it deals with outwardly is racism. So Kiera is one of the few black students at her school. I believe she, her sister, and her boyfriend are the only black students at her school, which is a majority white school. And when she's at school, she doesn't like when people treat her as kind of the token black person or the authority. She has a white friend at the beginning who asks her would you be offended if I got dreadlocks? And she's basically like, I mean, I wouldn't personally be offended, but I can't speak for everyone. I'm just one person. So she kind of feels like there's kind of a weight on her all the time to kind of be the voice of the black population of her school, which is really stressful to her. So that's partially why her video game is an escape for her. She wants to, have that be her world. Another way this book deals with issues of racism is within the video game itself. The video game is a game all about different elements of black culture, which are represented in cards in the game that you can play, and then those cards kind of come to life in the game world, and it's really cool, all the parts that are written in the game world. So I would say, in terms of originality, this book absolutely gets a point because the original concept of the game and the mechanics of how it works are really interesting. The concept of taking that and mixing it with the contemporary struggle of being just a normal girl in high school who's also dealing with issues of feeling that she has to be a spokesperson for her own identity, which is incredibly stressful on an adult, let alone a teenager. So all of that, I felt like lent itself to a super original concept that made this book really stand out. The next category I'm going to talk about is immersion. And in terms of immersion, I'm going to frame, I guess immersion sometimes can kind of seem like the same thing as suspension of disbelief. But for me, immersion is kind of how quick did I get just sucked into the story? How much was I like, oh yeah, I gotta keep reading? And let me say, y'all, it was fast. I finished this book so quickly. I was just reading through it. I'm like, I need to know what happens next. I could not put this book down. In between conference calls for work, I was picking it back up and laying on the couch and being like, oh my god, checking the clock. When do I have to go back to work? I want to keep reading. What is happening? What's gonna happen? And then there was a plot twist. So guys, I would say this book kept my attention the entire way through. Great job. 1 point for that. The plot of this book was just absolutely fascinating, and I've gone on about the plot already. Let's talk about the characters for a second because I loved the characters. So we've got the main character, Kiera, who is incredibly smart. She's smart, she's confident, and I love seeing young women, particularly teenage girls, being portrayed as smart and confident and sure of themselves, although they still have those moments of self-doubt to fall back on because we're all human, guys. That's what happens. So she's got those moments of self-doubt, she's got those moments of fear, she's got those moments of being naive because she's not really a full adult yet, but she's also got that intelligence, and she knows she's smart, and she knows she's confident, and she is sure of herself, and I loved that about her. But I think even more than Kiera, I liked her sister, Steph. Her sister was fantastic. Her sister just constantly had the perfect comeback to everything. So her sister Steph is a year younger than she is, and she's like a hardcore feminist. And whenever someone would bring up some kind of issue and talk about it from like a male perspective, Steph would just be on it with like, okay, but you're looking at it from the male gaze and that kind of thing. It was just great to hear her just like pop in with always the right thing to say. I know a lot of people say they want a book about a side character, but like when it comes down to it, the book about the side character is not what they thought it would be. No, genuinely, I think Steph would be a great character for a companion book. I would read the crap out of that. Oh my god. I loved her. I love how smart she is. Honestly, and like Steph, it's brought up many times that she has a strong skill for debating. I would love to see like a book where Steph is like on the debate team or something and she's just like crushing dudes constantly. Like I would love that. Anyway, so I loved Steph. But on top of the main characters, I loved that this book took a few detours every couple chapters to be told from an alternating perspective. So you guys know, alternating first person has a really close place to my heart. It's what I love to write. It's what I love to read. So this book is primarily told through Kiera's perspective, but every few chapters, it will go into a different person's perspective of a person who plays the game Slay. And these are people all over the world. So you see like her friend Cicada in France, who is the girl who's developing it with her, and you learn more about her and her perspective. Then we get a chapter from the perspective of a guy who is on like a business trip in China and is sitting down to play it. We get a perspective of a young trans woman who this game is an escape from her parents who are not accepting of her trans identity. We see an uncle playing it with his nephews. His nephews introduce him to the game for the first time, and he's like, wow, this is the cool video game stuff all the cool kids are talking about. So just seeing all those different perspectives, which all felt distinct and organic, but also all showed and tied together how the game was working. And they all tied together in different elements of the story, even if it wasn't immediately obvious how each one was going to tie together. So just brilliant writing on that end. The next point is for suspension of disbelief. Unfortunately, this is going to be the one and only place where I don't give it the full point. And that is going to be for one reason, and that's that I couldn't tell, because when I was reading this book, I was discussing it with one of my friends who was also reading this book, and we were talking about how we couldn't tell if this book was a contemporary young adult book or like a slightly in the future young adult book because of the way that the programming was talked about and the way that the game functioned. There were just a few things about that, so let me explain real quick. If we said this book takes place 20 years in the future, this book takes place in the 2040s, I think that would make more sense because of the game development aspects of it. The fact that this is, you know, a worldwide VR MMORPG that has very complex mechanics, which, don't get me wrong, seeing those mechanics in action was beautiful and was awesome. Seeing that game was entirely developed by two 17 to 19-year-old young people. The fact that it was hosted entirely on 6 servers on a university campus, and just kind of looking at the complexities of it. Just because the majority of my friends work in software development, I have friends that work in video game development. I'm married to someone who did his bachelor's degree in game development, and I was there kind of watching him do his final game project, which was a much simpler, like a game that wasn't even a tenth of the complexity of this, and it was like, it was all encompassing for 6 college seniors. And to see like companies, like this kind of game seems like something that would take over a year for an entire corporation to build. So this is not, I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way. I don't want anyone to be like, Savvy, you're saying that a smart young teenage girl isn't capable. Like, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that I don't think we feasibly have the technology that would make sense for one person to be able to put in solely that many hours, and that I don't think 6 servers would be enough to host that much data. I don't know if this is making sense. And the thing is, I know people have brought this up, and that's really not the point of the book, which I know it's not. The point of the book has a lot more to do with the interactions of the characters, with the interactions and intersection of racial issues and gender issues and video game issues and the discussion about video games. And like, there is so many more important things to talk about than this, but that every once in a while I felt like I kept having to like go back a few pages to be like, wait, was this clarified? Like, was this like what? So what this comes down to is me not saying that there's anything wrong with the book for this, but me saying that I wish it was a series. Like, if that makes sense, I wish that this was one book in a series, because I think this could be an entire world that was built. Like, this game universe, and this world where, like, and that's why I was saying, like, maybe it took place, like, 20 years in the future, because if you look at it that way, it's like, okay, if you had a thing about, like, teens building things on websites back in 1980, like, that would be a little bit like, what? But if they're doing it in 2020, like, oh, wow, definitely, obviously they can do that. Yeah, so I think that's why it, like, maybe in the future there's technology that makes it faster or something like that. I don't know, you guys. But my point in all of this is that I wish it were a series, because I wanted to see more of the coding elements. I wanted to see more of what it looked like when she was writing the code. I mean, I don't need to see all the code written out word for word, but I wanted to see some of it, especially because, like, we're getting the main character's perspective, and this is clearly, like, a huge, huge part of her life. So I wanted to see some more of that. I thought we could have a whole series in this book where this one guy ends up getting murdered, and then that throws this whole game and this whole school and everything into a big tizzy. That could be this book, and then there would be all these other books. So, like, I would read a full series of this. So just because of that, I was just not giving it the 1 point for that. But moving on to overall value, 1000% it gets a point for overall value, because Guys, I flew through this book. This book said a lot of really important things. This book had so many characters that I just fell in love with, and when the book was over, I'm like, what? I wanted more, though. So, would I recommend that you read Slay? 1000% yes. I will link the book in the description below, and if you read it, I really hope you enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts on this book in the comment section below. The next book review I'm going to be doing, I believe, is going to be for the book Authorpreneur, which is kind of a self-help style book. So we're kind of bouncing around, doing fiction versus non-fiction and that kind of thing, but then we will have... Actually, after that, we're going to have Bright-Sided, which is another nonfiction. So we're going to have a fiction and nonfiction mix in here, because after that, I believe we're doing The Cyborg Tinkerer by fellow AuthorTuber Meg Latour, who runs iWriterly. So, guys, we've got so many more books coming up. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you join Savvy's Book Club if you want to have these discussions on Facebook as well as in the comment section. I will see you guys all again soon. But in the meantime, don't forget to support small businesses. And what do small businesses include? Small bookstores. So take a look in the description below where I have linked Books and Crannies, which is the bookstore where I purchased this book, Slay. I ordered it online from them. I'm not going into bookstores. There's a pandemic going on, friends. So you can order books online from local bookstores. Now, if you're like, but I like to buy indie books from small business owners and they're not available at those local bookstores, well then guess what? You can do that on Amazon. But not only can you do that on Amazon, a lot of indie authors, myself included, have our own websites where we're selling the book directly to you. So that's in the description below as well. Guys, supporting small businesses, the internet has never made small businesses so accessible. And that is what is so wonderful about this day and age. And that is what is so wonderful about books like Slay, which have an optimistic look about awesome gamer girls and where we're going in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy Monday.
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago.
You guys asked for it.